up on this Friday edition of Newsline at noon, Korea's industrial output expanded at its slowest pace ever last year as the economy struggled to overcome last April's ferry disaster. North Korea experts in Seoul say they expect the two Koreas to resume talks once Seoul and Washington wrap up their upcoming joint military drills. Plus, militants linked to Islamic State claim responsibility for a series of deadly attacks in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. It's noon Friday, January 30th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story on this Friday lunchtime. A visiting U.S. official says there's no daylight between the North Korea policies of the United States and South Korea.
U.S. Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs Wendy Sherman told South Korean officials that Washington is just as committed to Pyongyang's denuclearization as Seoul is. Hwang Seung-hee reports.
U.S. Undersecretary of State Wendy Sherman reiterated that the United States and South Korea share the same policy when it comes to North Korea. This as Washington has been ramping up pressure on Pyongyang amid Seoul's efforts to improve inter-Korean relations, raising concerns that the two allies were losing coordination.
We have the same policy as the Republic of Korea does, and that is to ultimately have a denuclearized peninsula. Denuclearization is the first priority where North Korea is concerned.
Following a vice ministers' meeting in Seoul on Thursday, Sherman said all members of the six-party nuclear talks, aside from North Korea, are working together to see what more they can do to engage Pyongyang. The multilateral dialogue involving the two Koreas, the U.S., China, Japan, and Russia, has been stalled for more than 6 years. Earlier this month, the U.S. rejected North Korea's offer to temporarily suspend nuclear tests in return for a halt in joint military drills between Seoul and Washington. It has been urging Pyongyang to take steps towards denuclearization before returning to talks, but Sherman declined to specify what those steps were.
North Korea needs to show concretely that is taking steps towards denuclearization. There are many ways to do that. And I support our special envoy in his efforts, and I'm not going to list specifics either.
Sherman reiterated that Washington supports President Park Geun-hye's initiatives for inter-Korean dialogue, saying that the U.S. looks forward to the day the peninsula is unified. South Korea was the second leg of her three-nation tour, which also included China and Japan. Hwang Seung-hee, Arirang News.
The United States says Russia is on board when it comes to the need to denuclearize North Korea. Speaking to reporters in Beijing on Thursday, Washington's Special Representative for North Korea Policy Sung Kim said that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's expected visit to Moscow in May doesn't change Russia's stance on Pyongyang's nuclear program, as agreed upon in a joint six-party statement back in 2005. Sung Kim was in China for North Korea-related talks with Chinese nuclear negotiators. Now, in the world of inter-Korean relations, 2015 seemed to get off to a pretty good start with Seoul and Pyongyang expressing a willingness to hold high-level talks. Well, the line seems to have gone cold since then, however, with North Korea staying tight-lipped on the South's offer of dialogue. Taking a look at the prospects for inter-Korean talks this year, here's Connie Kim.
Since South Korea issued its proposal for inter-Korean talks in late December, the two Koreas have been unable to narrow down their differences over a set of preconditions laid out by Pyongyang. North Korea has maintained a virtual silence on the proposal, but experts say that while momentum has been lost, they're optimistic as both Koreas see the need for talks. On the South Korean side, President Park Geun-hye wants to see progress in her trust-building process as she enters her third year in office. And North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, in his fourth year in power, wants to ease his country's economic hardship by achieving some stability on the diplomatic front. So the question boils down to when the talks will take place especially as Seoul and Washington are gearing up to hold joint military drills in March.
I would not expect any serious talks during the drills. Indeed, once it begins, everything will be frozen for a while. If nothing is heard until the beginning of these exercises, it means that the situation is likely to remain frozen. But, well, maybe even in this case there will be more contacts after the exercises end.
Other experts are more optimistic about the possibility for talks, saying there could be a breakthrough this year.
The ideal scenario would be an exchange of envoys in February, a round of talks preparing for a summit in April, and holding a third inter-Korean summit in June.
Insiders say, however, that Pyongyang's bigger goal is breaking out of its diplomatic isolation. Kim Jong-un's expected trip to Russia in May to attend an anniversary event is seen as part of those efforts. There's also speculation Kim might head to Indonesia before that. Sources in Seoul say the North Korean leader could go to Bandung Conference of non-aligned Asian and African countries in April. That's because Kim's grandfather and the regime's founder, Kim Il-sung, attended this event back in 1965, and the younger Kim has a track record of modeling himself after his grandfather's leadership style. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
South Korea's presidential office says a reference to monetary exchange as a precondition to inter-Korean talks in former President Lee Myung-bak's latest memoir is, quote, appalling. A Cheongwade official speaking on the condition of anonymity questioned how detailing accounts of past foreign affairs, including inter-Korean dialogue, would promote national interests. The official added the current Park Geun-hye administration believes in transparency in carrying out its foreign policies. In his new book, the former president revealed how, during secret inter-Korean meetings during his term in office, North Korea had repeatedly demanded various aid from the South in return for an apology for torpedoing a South Korean warship in 2010 and a leaders' summit. Now, it looks like more and more people in North Korea are going mobile. Data released by the Seoul-based Korea International Trade Association on Friday shows that North Korea imported $82.8 million worth of mobile phones from China last year. That's nearly double the amount recorded in 2013. It's also the highest since the association began tracking import volume in 2007. There has reportedly been a boost in demand for IT devices like smartphones in Pyongyang, with the growth of the elite class after Kim Jong-un came to power. As of June last year, the number of mobile phone users in North Korea stood at 2.4 million. That's roughly 10% of the entire population.
U.S.-based experts on East Asia are predicting yet another rocky year for Korea-Japan ties, despite 2015 marking the 50th anniversary since the two countries established diplomatic relations. A poll by the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington found that 6 out of 10 experts say they expect ties to remain frosty this year and for cooperation between Seoul, Tokyo, and Washington to be sporadic. More than 20% said they think ties will actually worsen due to disputes over territorial and historical issues. A mere 11% believe relations will improve to a degree where President Park Geun-hye and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will hold their first summit. The survey was conducted on around 100 experts and scholars. Korea's industrial output rose at its slowest pace ever last year, and one of the clearest signs yet that the economy is struggling to pick up a decent head of steam. Business sentiment among manufacturers also remains sluggish. Hwang Jie has the details.
Korea posted the worst output last year. Statistics Korea says the country's output across all industries went up a mere 1.1% in 2014 from a year earlier. That marks the slowest pace of growth since the year 2000, when the agency started to compile related data. The agency attributed the sluggish growth to an overall downturn last year, as the economy was hit hard by the Seoul ferry disaster and partial strikes in the auto industry. By sector, output in mining and manufacturing remained unchanged from the previous year, while service sector output rose 2.2%. Facility investment, however, jumped more than 4.5% on the back of strong investments in auto parts. December's industrial output also rose almost 1% from a month ago after auto workers ended their strikes and factories normalized operations. Still, experts say it's hard to interpret last month's uptick as a recovery sign, as a rebound coming from the end of strikes will only last so long. Such gloomy economic data is directly reflected in how businesses are seeing the economic conditions. The Bank of Korea says its manufacturers' business sentiment index for this month came in at 73, unchanged from a month earlier. A reading under 100 means pessimists outnumber optimists. 황지혜, 아리랑 뉴스.
Duty-free shops at Korea's Incheon International Airport are doing a brisk business thanks in large part to big-spending Chinese tourists. Sensing an opportunity, Korean companies are vying for their slice of this lucrative pie. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Businesses big and small are in a bidding war. The prize is the chance to open a duty-free shop at Incheon International Airport. The 14 bidders this year include conglomerates such as Lotte, Silla, and Shinsegae, and smaller licensees like Donghua. The reason for the tight competition is the duty-free shops have seen their sales jump by an average of 10% a year over the past 5 years. The sales volume of the duty-free shops at Incheon was among the largest of such shops worldwide. The duty-free shops at Incheon seem to have a bright future, largely thanks to the increase in the number of Chinese tourists visiting the country, as their spending comprises 35% of total sales at the shops. The airport topped the list of the world's best duty-free shops in a business traveler survey of Chinese tourists in 2014. But the appeal of opening a duty-free shop at Incheon cannot be expressed in numbers only. Companies are using the know-how they've gained at the airport to expand their business overseas. For example, Lotte reported sales of $3.8 billion last year at duty-free shops in airports and cities around the world, including Moscow's Sheremetyevo's Airport, Indonesia's Soekarno-Hatta, Japan's Kansai Airport, and in Guam. That's a 6-fold increase from 2000. The Incheon International Airport Corporation says it will finalize which businesses win this year's round of bidding by February 28th. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
And staying at Incheon Airport, and fewer travellers are passing through Korea's main gateway than before. The Incheon International Airport Corporation said on this Friday that the number of passengers transferring at the airport dropped 6% last year to 7 million, or 467,000 less than in 2013. The company attributed the decline to a lower number of Chinese and Japanese passengers actually passing through Incheon on their way to other international destinations. Chinese airline companies are now offering more non-stop flights to the US and also to Japan. Tokyo's Haneda Airport has also opened international routes to 13 new destinations for a total of 16. Airport authorities have expressed concern that this could put Incheon Airport a step behind in its race to become the hub for Northeast Asia. Korea's main stock exchange has been taken off a list of state institutions. This delisting will enable it to implement an alternative trading system and pursue overseas operations in the future. The Finance Ministry says the Korea Exchange met the requirements to be delisted after fixing its lax management and cutting welfare benefits to employees by nearly 70%. The Korea Exchange was designated as a public institution by the Lee Myung-bak administration in 2009, 4 years after it was founded.
Time now for a look through the global headlines we're following this Friday lunchtime from Seoul. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim standing by at the news center for us.
Eunice, a new deadly attack, this time on a military base in Egypt, has been claimed once again, it seems, by Islamic State.
That's right, Mark. It was a series of bombings this time targeting a military base in the town of Al-Arish in North Sinai. At least 27 people have been killed, mostly soldiers, with dozens of others wounded. Egyptian officials say militants detonated a car bomb Thursday, local time, and fired mortar rounds at a hotel, a police club, and several security checkpoints. Also, a flagship government newspaper said its Al-Arish office, located opposite of the base, had been completely destroyed. The Islamic State affiliate in Egypt, previously known as Ansar Bait and Maqdis, has claimed responsibility for this attack. An army major was also later shot dead at a checkpoint in the border town of Rafah. And the sunset deadline imposed by the latest purported IS audio has come and gone with no prisoner swap. Jordan held back from releasing the Iraqi fighter as demanded by the Islamic State, saying it is still waiting for the group to meet its request.
Jordan requested a proof of life for the life of the Jordanian pilot, and we have not received that yet. We want to see a proof of life of the Jordanian pilot, and then we can talk about the exchange between Sajid al-Rishawi and the Jordanian pilot.
Separately, the spokesman also said Amman was working with Tokyo to secure the release of Japanese hostage Kenji Goto. Ahead of the deadline's expiry, the journalist's wife broke her silence to publicly urge the two governments to save her husband and father to two young daughters, expressing concern that this latest ultimatum could be the last. So far, there has been no response from the extremist group that had threatened to immediately kill the young Jordanian pilot it was holding if Amman did not produce the Iraqi female fighter by sunset on Thursday. A maternity and children's hospital is in shambles in Mexico City after a gas explosion ripped through some 70% of the structure. Mexico City Mayor Miguel Angel Mancera said a woman and her baby were confirmed to have died, with 66 others injured, 22 of them seriously. Authorities believe the blast was caused by a leak in a hose of a gas truck, which was fueling the hospital's gas tanks. After nearly 10 months since the plane went missing, Malaysian authorities have officially declared the cause of Flight 370's disappearance as an accident. They said they had pursued every credible lead, and despite ongoing recovery efforts in the southern Indian Ocean, there was no trace of the Boeing 777. The announcement would clear for compensation to be paid to the family members of the 239 people on board, now officially presumed dead. Family members, however, expressed disappointment and said authorities need to produce evidence to back their claims.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea, connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on NEWSLINE at Noon with Mark Broome and Eoh Jin-joo.
I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
Market researcher, strategy analytics, and Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about 11.
For travelers planning a trip to an urban area, this new report called the Safe Cities Index is something you might want to keep an eye on. Topping the list as the safest city in the world is Tokyo. UK-based think tank Economist Intelligence Unit selected 50 cities from around the world and analyzed them based on 4 criteria: digital security, health security, infrastructure safety, and personal safety. Asian cities like Singapore and Osaka and European cities like Stockholm and Zurich took up some of the other top spots. South Korea's capital, Seoul, ranked the 24th on the list. And Korea's education ministry aims to strengthen the nation's public safety education program in schools by increasing the number of classroom hours and offering more hands-on training. Park Ji-won sends this report from the city of Taebaek, where one of the country's safety training facility is located.
Since last year's tragic ferry disaster that claimed hundreds of innocent young lives, people have pointed to the lack of public safety education in Korea. In response, the nation's education ministry is aiming to strengthen public safety education for students.
The nation grieved over the Seoul ferry tragedy. Life and safety are top priorities for the Park Geun-hye administration, and we aim to give students public safety education to prevent such a tragedy from recurring.
Although the current law stipulates that students undergo 44 hours of public safety education per year, only 6 of those hours are related to disaster prevention. And most of the time is spent in lectures with few opportunities for hands-on training. So on Thursday, the education minister paid a visit to Korea's largest public safety education center located in Taebaek, Gangwon-do Province to take a tour. The facility, called 365 Safe Town, provides hands-on training from life-saving techniques to three-dimensional disaster simulations. The ministry is considering establishing MOUs with safety awareness facilities such as this to provide kids with public safety education that's both fun and effective.
More than ever, we need to raise awareness about public safety among students. We will introduce policies so that public safety awareness facilities like this can be part of students' education.
This month, the Education Ministry will also designate 51 schools nationwide as locations for a pilot program for public safety. Park Ji-won, Arirang News, Taebaek.
Now, Australia's biggest national holiday was celebrated right here in Seoul last night. A few days late, however. Australia Day was marked with an event that showcased everything the land down under has to offer Korea. Connie Lee has more.
Fresh, plump cherries, mangoes as large as your face, and deep red wine. These are just a few of the things that are here in Korea, straight from Australia. Celebrating Australia Day under the theme of Showcasing Australia, the nation's embassy in Seoul held a gala event to highlight all the things the nation has to offer to Korea as a key trade and investment partner. With the Korea-Australia Free Trade Agreement in full effect since December 2014, there are certain items from the land down under that are now cheaper here in Seoul. For instance, these cherries. The removal of the 24% tariff has made these fruits much more affordable to Korean consumers. Likewise for Australian wine.
I'm a lover of wine. It's a personal interest of mine. So I think with the tariff on wine coming down with the free trade agreement, I hope to see more range of choice of Australian wine in the market.
The Australian ambassador adds that he wants to stimulate new areas of trade this year and maintain his country's strong defense relationship with Korea.
We put a big emphasis on our defence relationship. Australia is very much an Asia-Pacific country, so peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula is central to our economic health.
The event also included a special performance by Korean-Australian pop singer Tommy Im, the 2013 winner of the singing show X Factor Australia.
I do want to come back to Korea this year, and if I get the opportunity, I want to do my own concert and, actually get to meet my fans and spend a bit more time with them.
Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Now, anticipation is steadily reaching fever pitch ahead of Saturday's Asian Cup final between South Korea and Australia. South Korea has already beaten Australia in the tournament and has a perfect defensive record. But how are they going to cope inside a Sydney stadium packed with tens of thousands of Aussies screaming their country on? Our SJ Lee has a preview of the big match.
5 matches, 5 wins, and not a single goal conceded. Expectations weren't high at the start, but now the South Korean national football team is on the brink of winning its first Asian Cup title in 55 years. But with Australia playing in front of their home crowd, it won't be an easy task, as the Socceroos are looking to win their first ever Asian Cup title. It's a battle between the tournament's best defensive team in Korea, who have yet to give up a single goal, and an Australian team that have scored the most goals with 12, with 10 different players finding the back of the net. And while the Taeguk Warriors beat the Socceroos 1-0 in their opening group stage match, most analysts expect the home team will push forward aggressively and try to break through the South Korean defense early on. The final carries extra weight as the winner also qualifies for the 2017 Confederation Cup in Russia. The Asian Cup final between South Korea and Australia kicks off in Sydney on Saturday at 6 p.m. Korea time. SJ Lee, Arirang News.
It looks much brighter outside today, but don't be fooled by the sun. It's much colder. The daytime high in Seoul will only top out at 1, and wind chill factor will bring down the perceived temperatures a few degrees. In the meantime, Daegu and Gwangju will top out at 6 and 4 this afternoon. And Jeju Island will see a high of 6, and Daejeon and Dokdo both tops out at 3. Now, the cold snap will continue through the weekend, and for those who plan to watch the final match of the Asian Cup outside, be sure to dress extra warmly. Readings are likely to plummet to the freezing side by 6 in the evening tomorrow when the game kicks off. So it seems like January will close out under cold conditions, but February looks to be relatively milder than the seasonal norms. We'll have rain in the middle of the month, but generally it will be mostly sunny. That's all from me this week. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you very much, Jeon, for the weather. And those are the stories we're following on this Friday afternoon.
Join us again at the same time on Monday. Have a great weekend.